Hello and welcome back to 2020. It is the GC Sunscast. I'm your host Shane, back again. Joining me on the line is Tom. Welcome back to a new year, Tom.
Yeah, Shane, I'm doing great, mate. My 49ers just made it through to the Super Bowl yesterday. Couldn't be happier. Absolutely top of the world. How's your Christmas and New Year's been, mate?
Yeah, busy. Always working. That's just you got to work hard to make the money, and that's what I'm always doing.
Yeah, and you've started up a new GC Sunscast project, haven't you?
Yeah. So what I was thinking along this, I spend a lot of my spare time playing video games, and it's so easy these days to stream what you're playing. And I figure, why not link this up with the GC Sunscast? I'll spend an hour every Thursday night and just play the latest video game and interact with the community that way. So we're going to do that on YouTube, and that way people can also watch back if they want to. And it's just a great way to interact with the community. People can jump on, have a chat with me. I can chat to them. And I imagine during the footy season, it's considering we don't seem to raise enough money to have a second GC Sunscast show, it's a good way for fans to get involved and ask questions about the AFL side with teams just coming out on the Thursday. Or we can talk about a lot of other stuff. I know you and I have to bite our tongue sometimes when it comes to other things. There was moments last year with Game of Thrones and things like that we want to talk about, but it's not really the right place to talk about. So this sort of option gives us an avenue to talk about pretty much anything and everything. It's called GC Sunscast Plays, and it will be on every Thursday at 8 p.m. So every Monday I'm planning on putting up a option of 3 different games on our Facebook page, and Suns fans can jump along, check that out, and vote on what game they'd like to see me play. And,
So how's that going so far? Have we got any votes or any feedback on that?
No, none as yet. I did try it last Thursday, but due to some technical issues with Twitch and YouTube, and I couldn't get the audio working properly, I've had to delay that and put it out and try again this week. But the games we've got this week are the AFL Evolution game. It was a PlayStation 4 game, came out about 3 or 4 years ago. I was able to actually find some updated team lists. So someone's created the Gold Coast Suns 2020 squad,
cool,
including Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson. So I'm planning, if I play that, I'll play the Suns 2020 side against probably the Brisbane's 2020 side.
Yeah.
Go up against our old mate Calamachi. The second option is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, that's inspired from the huge Netflix hit called The Witcher, which is going to destroy Game of Thrones. And,
I already crammed that in. I think I watched it in about a day and a half. Didn't get much sleep. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
I fell in love with that video game back in the probably 5 years ago, and got fully involved in that story, bought all the books, read all the books, absolutely love that franchise. And the third game is Borderlands 3, a classic shooter, which is talk of the town at the moment on the interwebs. So that's a bit of just plain fun. And a lot of our Suns players, they're young kids, and PlayStations, PC games, that's their outlet as well. So it's also giving us a window into the sorts of things that these guys might be playing to remove some of the tension and the pressures of the AFL lifestyle.
Well, Mitch Robinson is very, very famous for being a gamer, and I actually follow him on Twitter. And we have a bit of an argy-bargy every now and then, but he's a good bloke. I never used to like him as a player, but I think he's matured a bit, and I like his public profile. He's good with the kids, and he loves gaming. And his brother is a total gaming geek, and the two of them have been raising money for the bushfires and whatever. So Shane, if you can get a fraction of the following that those guys are getting, then raise the Suns' profile. If we maybe get a player or three interested, that'd be a really great new dimension to what we're trying to do and get the word out there. So gamers, get in there and vote for what you want Shane to be playing in 2 days' time.
Yeah, but probably the more important thing is interacting with the fans. It's the better part about it. I can sit there and play video games all day if I want to, but interacting with the fans is what's going to make this special. Now, let's move on. We've got to thank our Patreon donors, the Old Soul Patreon donors. Let's start with Jack's dad, Paul Vosdy, Brody Burgess, Robbie Fiorini, Chris Moore, Tom Kim, Dale Snelling, Kate Kelland, James Wood, and Tim. Thanks, guys, for supporting us throughout the summer months on Patreon. It goes a long way to helping us support the Gold Coast Suns and putting this show out. Now, let's get stuck into some news, Tom. There hasn't been too much over the Christmas period. It's actually been quite quiet compared to last year when we were getting a lot of news about the Suns pre-season camp in New Zealand being the biggest and hardest camp they've ever done. We haven't had much info come out. I think we saw a small little video clip of them camping over in New Zealand. We've seen a couple of small video clips this week of training. But that's about it. We've had one article come out today. Rory Thompson is on track to play some minutes in the Marsh Community Series coming up next month. So
he's back on track, and I mean it's less than 12 months since he did the injury, so he's a little bit ahead of his schedule, which is, I think maybe he's a lot ahead of his schedule, to be honest. He's been training on his own, doing rehab and all that kind of thing for 11 and a half months, and the news that he's ready to play, that's just fantastic.
So just about a month away is the Suns' first game in the Marsh Community Series. We will be playing Geelong at Metricon Stadium, 6:30 p.m. Queensland time. So that's going to should be a good clash. We usually do pretty well against Geelong in the preseason anyway.
It's a double-header too, Shane. So AFLW as well as AFL men's. So we'll for the hardcore supporters, it'll be a family day. I reckon it'll be on par with a regular season game, given the fact that it's a double header, and the women's game, of course, is free of charge. Not sure of the cover charge for a Marsh Cup game, or previously known as the JLT.
I think for
they changed their name to Marsh. So
I think for Suns members, it's free entry. From memory, I think it was usually a $10 entry fee to get into pre-season games.
Not bad.
A couple of weeks later, on Friday, March the 6th, the Suns take on Adelaide at Flinders University Stadium. That looks like it's in South Australia somewhere, but I'm not game enough to say where. So there are two matches in the pre-season, but we also have the Bushfire relief game that was announced a few weeks ago. It's essentially a state of origin game, Allies versus Victoria. Now, the AFL has put forward a submission to all the clubs nominating 8 players they want made available for this game. So, being the AFL nominating, you would think it's going to be the best players from each club. I do know it is 4 players to represent the Allies and then 4 players to represent Victoria. So, however, only a maximum of 3 players can play in that game, so it doesn't disrupt the pre-season too much.
No, that's right, and maybe only 1, but it's at least 1.
At least 1. I think they're squads of 27, so that would be 54 a side in total, and I think that's essentially 3 players from each club will be required to attend these training sessions or meetings leading up to it. Whether we have more than 1 Suns player playing, I'm not sure. Now, who would you think... What are 3 players you think the Suns would be losing for this game, Tom?
Well, my first thoughts were David Swallow and Jared Witts. And then I thought, well, okay, so they're both allies. And then I kept thinking along that way, are there any Queenslanders in our... And then there's Alex Sexton. So those are the first three that I thought of. Of course, Witsy's hurt his foot, which doesn't seem like it's a major setback. And, he'll just be in cotton wool until he's needed for the beginning of the season. So Swallow and Sexton I would have thought would be the top of the list. But now that I look at the players available, I'd probably chuck in Brandon Ellis in there and to replace Witts. So what do you think? Are you thinking more youth or experience?
I'm thinking there's a lot of names that's being mentioned to join the Allies and the Victorian squad that we're forgetting. Obviously, Alex Sexton is probably one of the obvious candidates. He's been a great goal sneak in the competition over the last few years. But I think we've got to look at the Suns don't have too much experience. And if we're looking for experience, then we've got to probably look at one of our newest recruits in Brandon Ellis. He was a premiership Tiger last year. Now, I believe he would probably be Victorian. So,
definitely, yeah. He's born and bred in Carlton.
He would be lining up for the Victorian team, you'd think. And I think if we're looking at other Victorians, Fiorini certainly in contention. I
wonder if he'd be nominated because he's only just come back to training. He had an operation in the off season, so
that could be an issue.
Yeah, on form you pick him, but yeah, I doubt they'd risk him. That's my thing.
All the hype, you would think Matt Rowell might even be considered.
Yeah, it'd be funny, wouldn't it, seeing Matty Rowell and maybe Isaac Rankin on the opposition? Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of any other sport where a player would represent their state at open level before they've debuted. But Matty Rowell could be the first. And yeah, Isaac Rankin's a year further out of the system but hasn't debuted yet. So, how many full forwards do the Victorian team want to pick? I mean, they could pick Peter Wright, they could pick Ben King. There's two arguments there. One is that Wright's got the experience and potential. He'd probably be playing next to Tom Lynch, and there may be consideration there.
That's the thing. The coaches essentially pick the final 27 out of the short list they've been given. Now, they're not going to pick any of our key forwards when they've got, in particular, the Victorian team's got a choice of, like you said, Jeremy Cameron, Tom Lynch, Jack Rewalt. There's just too many options there for them.
Rewalt's Tasmanian, mate. He'll be in the Allies.
He'd be locked away in the Allies side. Taylor Walker would be in the Allies side potentially. What's the West Coast bloke? Kennedy?
Yeah, I just wonder if clubs are going to put their best players forward or if we're going to see a diminished pool and the coaches are going to be selecting, similar to the AFLX, right? So we didn't see the very, very best elite players, but we did see a lot of very good players who were injury-free and happy to risk themselves.
Well,
even
of the
Nat
stars
Fyfe
from the
AFLX thing on his arm.
One of the stars from the AFLX was Lockie Weller, so I would think he's a near certainty to be named to be a part of this squad.
Yeah. Well, he'd definitely be Allies, Tasmanian/Queenslander. So, and played his AFL career over in Western Australia. So definitely he'd be probably one of the leaders of the Allies. You'd reckon. I did overlook him. What do you think about good old Harbrow and Hanley? Are they going to stay in cotton wool or? Actually, Hanley's not eligible. I should point out.
Why is Hanley not eligible?
He's not Australian.
But they've said anyone from overseas can represent the Allies.
That's
so Hanley is certainly eligible to play for the Allies. Harbrow, I believe,
the information I read. So.
Okay, I read that today. Harbrow's eligible to play, but I think he's coming back from injury, so I don't see him fitting in. All right, let's move on. The other big discussion is what's our best 22 going to look like now that all the players are back training. We've got a near full list, with the exception of Fiorini, Powell, Thompson all coming back from injuries, Harbrow as well. It's going to be an interesting best 22.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got 26 and can't make 22. When you take the injuries out, it gets closer down to 22. You'd expect Harbs to be right for round one, so he's in my best 22, but there's question marks over guys, as you mentioned, Fiorini and Thompson are in my 22, and I don't know if they're going to be ready for round one. I hope so.
All right,
I really do.
Let's look at it this way. Let's go off our best 22s each, assuming these players are all fit to play. Now, what we will do is any position that we agree on as a consensus, we lock that in. Any position which differs, we will put out to the community via Facebook in a poll and get feedback onto what our fans think the best 22 teams should be looking like. And we also appreciate your feedback, listeners, to jump on the chat or on Facebook. Let us know what your best 22 is, because it's a very interesting discussion this time of year. And it's so easy to miss out on a player, especially considering we've got 51 players on our list. It's so easy to forget about a player. Now, let's start in the back line. Now, I've got Collins in a pocket, Thompson at fullback, and Harbrow in another pocket.
Well, I've got Harbrow and Thompson, so we can lock them in. And this isn't to say that I disagree with you, because I do have Collins in my 22. But I've got Hanley in the back pocket, just because I've also got another tall. So I've got three talls in the back line. It sounds like you've got three talls. So, but my other, so if we lock in Harbrow, Thompson, and Collins, and we can argue about the positions later on.
All right, sounds good. So half back line, I've gone with Lockie Weller on the flank, Jack Hompsch at centre half back, and I've gone with a surprise one that we discussed actually last year, Tuke Miller on a half back flank.
Yeah, I've got him on my bench as the seventh back.
Okay.
So he's in.
So I think we're both of the opinion that Tuke Miller can change his game plan to be that defensive defender and lock down on an opponent.
I think he needs to be able to play whatever percentage of the time that he needs to play midfield, whether it's as little as 20% to be part of the rotation or as much as 50%. But I think he's got to lock down a position. And as we saw the last 2 years, the Suns don't play six backs, they play seven, but they don't play seven at a time. They rotate. And they don't just rotate one on, one off, one on, one off. There are some guys who spend most of the time on, and when they come off, the player that comes on for them might just be spending 5 minutes in the back line and going to the midfield just to get warmed up or whatever. So I think that's Tuke's role, is to be part of that rotation. But where do we put Hanley?
I haven't even got him inside what I've got a best 22. I've got interchange. That's part of that. And then I've got the emergency, so that's 26. I haven't even got Handley in my 26.
Wow. Are you overlooking that, or are you over him?
No, I'm over him. I haven't seen the best of him since he came to the Suns. We see flashes every now and then, but I think we've got too much youth and too many more reliable players that can fill that role. And with Ellis coming in to the midfield to play off a wing, I think we can now afford to play Lockie Weller permanently off a half-back flank, which sort of reduces the need for Hanley. I think we can only have Hanley or Harbrow in the side at the same time.
I think we've got our first poll. Because, and I want to remind you of something, and I'm also going to drop myself in it as well. Do you remember who you nominated who would be predicted for best and fairest last year in the preseason?
Best and fairest last year?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I would have said Wits.
Yep.
Was it Wits?
It was Here's Hanley.
Hanley? No.
You predicted for best of it. Yeah, you did. And you know who I predicted?
Who?
Jack Martin. Didn't even come top 10. So
why are we doing a podcast?
We were both way off, and I've gone off Martin, so I can see why you've gone off Hanley. That Hanley versus... are you saying Took? Okay, I reckon that's actually a very good first poll.
Okay, so Hanley versus Took for our first poll on our halfback flank.
Well, you also said Humpsh, and I've said Lukosius in the back line. Have you got Lukosius in your 22 at all? Or
I do have Lukosius in the 22. He is playing in a forward pocket.
Right, okay. I've got Lukosius on the half back line, and only because I like the three tall idea down back, and I think he could go up the wing and someone could drop back in there, someone like Took could drop back in there. But I think we can lock in 4 there. We can lock in Harbrow, Thompson, Collins, and Weller. Go Hanley versus Took for that smaller back, and yeah, I don't know. Lukosius, I guess we can have him in 2 polls.
Yeah, so Lukosius versus Homsch.
Yep. I got Homsch on my extended bench, but I just can't find a place for him in the 18.
All right. Now, let's move into the midfield. I've got Ainsworth and Ellis on the wings and Greenwood in the guts.
Okay. I've got Greenwood in my forward line, so we could be a little bit of moving around here. I've got Ainsworth on the bench. So come again, you've got Ellis. We'll lock him in.
Ellis, Ainsworth on the wings, and Greenwood in the guts. Now, I've
got Jack Bowes on the wing and David Swallow in the centre, but more than happy to clear out centre because we know Swallow's going to be playing, right?
Yeah.
Where have you got Bowes?
Bowes I've got as a follower.
So you've got Swallow and Bowes as followers?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got 2 quite different followers. So let's see. Ainsworth on a wing. That would put Bowes to... That would probably put... I've got Brodie... Well, I'll give it away here, but I've got Brodie as a follower. So I'd probably put Brodie to the bench.
Which is where I've got him.
And Ainsworth on the wing and Bowes as a follower, so that's fine.
So you're happy with Ainsworth, Greenwood, Ellis in the middle?
And if you want Greenwood in the middle...
Why do you have Greenwood down forward? He's come from... He does play sort of forward mid, yes, at Adelaide.
Yeah.
But you would think number one reason he's moved up is for more midfield opportunity. He's one of the greatest tacklers at Adelaide Crows, and now brings that up to the Gold Coast. So he's a great in and under ball winning midfielder that can get the ball out and kick goals. Now
that's interesting. I've got him at high half forward. I mean, it's not like he's that far away from the midfield. I've pretty much snuck him into the flank just because it's where we often keep that type of hard running midfielder. Like when we had Jared Lyons, he'd always be named on the forward flank. So that's why I've got him there. It's not,
right.
and because he does drift forward and kick goals as well. So
I think what's going to come down to is I've probably got too many forwards in my side at the expense of midfielders. Hence why I've moved Greenwood into the midfield. But we'll get around to that bit later, and we'll go back over it and just adjust it.
I got no problem with that. You've got Swallow as a follower.
Yeah.
And that shifts Brodie to the bench.
Well, let's talk about followers while we're here. Witts as ruck, I think, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, no-brainer.
Provided his foot injury isn't serious, which does have me concerned. Foot injuries and ruckman aren't a great combo.
I think he just had a... nurse. I used to go with a nurse, and nurses have the those charts at the end of the bed, and they have a code for each other that no one could pick up the chart and read it, and you wouldn't really understand. And it's called a PFO. Pissed, fell over. Now, Witsy probably wasn't pissed. He's probably he's a massive human, right? So he's just put his big foot in the wrong place and it does not sound like it's career threatening. He's had some simple surgery on it straight away. Just needs to put his foot up for a bit. He'll be fine.
All
big
right.
fella.
So Swallow and Bose as the followers, and you've got Brody and who did you have?
I got Matt Rowell. I'm going to start him. I suggest you've got him on the bench.
I do have Rowell on the bench. I did find room for him, but I was very nervous about playing our first year players straight because I think we've got a pretty strong side without them.
I do too, but I just think you want to unleash your new players, bring him out from the very beginning. If he does have some struggles, it'll be pretty evident in the first couple of games. Just don't think I haven't heard any of the experts or the so-called experts have any doubts that he's going to be just like Sam Walsh and just adapt straight away and improve every game and just be sort of named as one of the better midfielders and he's the prime candidate for Rising Star. So yeah, got to put him in, but I'm happy with him on the bench. I mean, it's either him on the bench or Ainsworth for me. So you've got Jack Bowes and Swallow. That's fine with me. Brody and Rowell can sit on the bench because they'll be a good 1-2 punch to bring in for Swallow and maybe Greenwood or something like that when they get tired after about 15-20 minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into the forward line. On the half-forward flank, I have Sexton and McPherson, and then I've got Day in the spine.
I think we've got another poll here. I've got Sexton and McPherson, but I've got Peter Wright because he's a better ruck backup than Day, even though Day is a better forward with the experience. Although Wright we always talk about his potential. So, have you got Wright anywhere?
I've found room for Wright on the bench. Aware that we might need a backup ruckman. So yeah, it's an interesting side, I must say. Looking at it, it's not my first pick, but apparently it is. If you know what I mean, it's I must be biased towards a few more of the flashy players and the taller players as well. I do value height in the team. The forward line, I've got Rankin and Lukosius in the pockets with King front and centre.
Yeah, well, as you remember, I had Greenwood in there, so swapping Greenwood out, I would have Sexton, McPherson, Rankin for sure, Ben King for sure, and then who would I put there? So I've got a flank spot. Now, if I look to my bench, because I've put players on the bench, I've got to take players off, it'll be Noah Anderson. So have you got Noah Anderson anywhere in your 22?
Unfortunately, no. Anderson is 23. He's the first emergency.
That's all right. You could still someone could step on a twist their ankle in warm up. So who have you got? Who's your front six? And how are we going to poll? How are we going to set up a poll? Because I will have to put Anderson in that spot.
Ben King is our clear lead-up marking tall forward. Yeah, he proved in his first year he was a dominant target and could take a mark and kick goals. So he is our focal point. Now I feel that you need another two tall players to be that foil. So you've got one foil at all times, while the second tall player acts as the centre half forward, leading up the ground, providing a link to get the ball down to full forward. So hence why I've chosen Day as that centre-half forward. I feel his aerobic ability to run up the ground and back is better than Peter Wright's.
Mm-hmm.
And Lukosius, I chose to play him in the forward line because he's a natural forward. He can use the ball well. He has the freedom and the flexibility to swap with Day and go further up to the midfield. And I feel like he could provide competition headaches playing both tall and small. So that's why I've chosen those two tall targets to pair up with King. Now, Rankin is forward pocket. He's a magician. So that's pretty self-explanatory. McPherson, I feel you need that hard edge to lock down, keep the ball in the forward line. And Sexton is the bloke that's going to attract the attention. You would remember last year me raving on about Sexton, how I don't like his game style. But the pure fact, I would use him as a decoy, as most opposition teammates are going to be constantly worrying about where Sexton is because of the damage he has proven he can do.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think Sexton was just getting goals left, right and centre in the first few games, and he went a bit quiet. He was still getting goals, but they weren't match-turning goals. I mean, he wasn't winning the games for us anymore. And a lot of the commentary around that seems to suggest that he was getting, and you can see it in hindsight, he was getting tagged. And when you're a forward and you get tagged, it's just hard mark. It's not really called a tag, but he's never been hard marked like that in his entire career. So Sexton's made his chops built his whole sort of, he's a regular first 22 player, and he's built his whole career on the fact that he can just sort of be hanging out there and just get the loose ball or be open for the hand pass or take a decent mark and clunk the big goals from outside 50 and that kind of thing. But he had a hard time getting used to the idea of being closely marked and sometimes sort of double teamed if it was a situation of like a ball up or something like that. So I agree with you. I think Sexton is certainly, no matter what, he's gonna get some goals. But if he's attracting a high quality defender, and it means that the opposition doesn't know whether to send their best quality small or medium sized backs to Rankin. Do you put someone bigger on Rankin to outbody him, or I don't think it'll work. Darcy McPherson is a little bloke as well, but they probably want to put someone bigger than him on him. So we could be looking at our small forwards for once, creating some selection headaches for the opposition. So I like those three choices. McPherson in the midfield works, but you lose your forward pressure. So whenever you move someone, when they're getting a bit older and a bit more mature, and he obviously wants the midfield minutes, but it takes too much away. I mean, when McPherson's on fire, he will create a turnover goal. And where do our goals come from? That if he's creating goals by kicking them, which is great, and getting the turnovers that lead to more goals, then leave him in the forward pocket.
Okay, so I guess the question comes down to, do you feel like my explanation of why I've got Day and Lukosius in the side justifies it?
Well, look, you've got Wright on the bench, and I've got Lukosius. I've agreed to sort of shift him out of the back line to make room. But I think the matchup here the two matchups here that we don't agree on are Wright versus Day, and even though you've got Day, got Wright on your bench, I don't have Day on my bench. So it's a case whether Wright is in the run on side or not. And little known fact, Noah Anderson is not a 188 centimetre player. He's 191 centimetres, and he might not have even finished growing. So when you compare him to Lukosius and all those skills you mentioned that Lukosius has, they're both number 2 draft picks. Lukosius is a year into the system, but played much better down back. Noah Anderson, I think it's worth putting it to the fans to choose. Got a feeling they'll probably choose Jack Lukosius, but let them decide.
Well, let's clear this up a bit. If we go over our bench, that sort of indicates which holes could be filled up on the field. So obviously, I've got Raul and Brody on the interchange bench. So they're your in and under midfielders to chop out in the midfield. I feel you need at least 2 midfielders on your bench. Now, I've also got Peter Wright, as we discussed. Now, looking at that, you'd think, hang on, there's no defenders. I've got Peter Wright here. Well, I feel like Wright could easily substitute into Day or Lukosius' spot down forward. And either of those 2 players are quite capable of going back and filling in the back line. And finally, my 4th interchange spot was Braden Fiorini. He's a gun midfielder, but he's also got the potential to do damage down forward. So I view him as like a half-forward midfielder. We could always push Ainsworth down forward and move Fiorini up into the middle. So that's always a flexibility option. I mean, you spoke before about McPherson going into the midfield. We lose that tackling edge. I think Fiorini could provide that. And then I also feel like Ainsworth could easily slide back down into the forward line from the wing and provide that hard edge in the tackle.
Well, look, at the end of that, my reading on that is, I'm not actually looking at your 22. I'm looking at mine and hearing what you're saying. I think overall you've got Sam Day and Jack Hompsch, and I've got Noah Anderson, and I can't quite work out who the other player is that I've got that you don't. So we'll have to...
You had Hanley, didn't you?
Sorry?
You had Hanley, didn't you?
That's it.
Anderson
so I'm saying Hanley and Anderson are in there, and you're saying Wright and Day, and you're going for a bit more height overall, which is funny because that's what I was doing last year. I was saying, well, we finally got the height back, and height was one thing we had in 2014 that kept us in games. Well, obviously we went pretty well in the first 2/3 of that season, and we finally got a tall enough team back last year. But anyway.
Well, let's reflect on some of the players.
Four or five decisions for the fans to make.
I know. We'll put them out on Facebook over the coming weeks. But let's reflect on some of the players that hasn't had a mention in our best 22. Brodie Murdoch.
Jordan
Murdoch. Sorry, I'm thinking of his brother. Jordan Murdoch. Chris Burgess. Will Powell. Charlie Ballard.
Jesse Joyce.
Yeah. You got any others?
Depth. Sean Lemons. And some guys who played a lot of football for us in the last year or two. Nick Holman. Anthony Miles.
Miles as well, yep. So there's plenty of depth there. And
first round draft picks with Jez McLennan, Sam Flanders.
So there's absolutely plenty of depth there to keep the Suns going, and hopefully we should see a better year this year as the sun doesn't fade too early and shines bright right up until the end of August.
Absolutely. Now, look, this is our best time of the year. We get to the end of the season, we work out who we want to get rid of, then we find out who the club gets in, and then it's off to the cricket and the tennis and, and NFL, and I don't know. But are you a basketball fan, Shane?
No.
I know plenty of people are NBA fans, and then finally it comes down. Footy's a month away. And we're looking at best 22s seriously, and there's 30.
You there, Tom? You've cut out.
They would be very, very. Oh.
Okay.
I'm here, but anyway.
All right. Well, we're down to the last 5 minutes. Very
exciting times.
We're down to the last 5 minutes, Tom. So let's have a quick chat about the AFLW season that is fast approaching. Saturday, 8th of February. So that's only 2.5 weeks away. The Giants take on the Gold Coast Suns at 12:10 p.m. in Blacktown. So it'll be the first AFLW game for the Gold Coast Suns. Now, the sides are looking good. There's been a couple of really good articles in the Gold Coast Bulletin lately.
Just about every day. They're really really bringing it on, and our mate Tom Boswell is doing most of them. Does a terrific job, Tom.
And the amount of quality that the club's been able to secure for the AFLW side really gives the Suns a good chance to contend for finals and also be the best Queensland side in the competition.
Yeah, well, it's the first
Northern side.
It's the first national women. It was the only national competition that women on the Gold Coast are playing in. I probably haven't said that as well as I could, but I think that's really significant because all major cities, apart from the Gold Coast, have even minor cities. Canberra's not as big as the Gold Coast, and they've got women's teams playing in all sorts of national competitions. So, it's a really big step, and there's some really great stories. I mean, we could talk about it, but I feel like the Gold Coast Suns website and Gold Coast Bulletin and even the AFLW website are really bringing in some really great content. So just get on one of those sites and go and read about it for yourselves. I will name one player who I'm really excited about is I hope I say her name right, is Jade Progelli. She was 10 years ago. She was the up and comer best female player in Queensland, and just there was no national competition, and just sort of wanted to have a career and study and make money, and went away from the game. And she's back, and she could just tear the league apart.
Okay, so we haven't had a captain announced for the side yet. But that looks likely to be announced in about 10 days. January the 31st, the Suns are holding a community event at the Hoda Outdoor Stadium and will likely present jumpers to the men's and the women's side and announce the captains. So who do you think will be captain for the women's in their inaugural season?
There's quite a few very experienced AFLW players like Sam Virgo and Leah Kasler. They have 5 or 6 to choose from. It kind of in part comes down to who's going to be fit for the whole season. So a couple of injury concerns there that might rule one or two of them out. But and possibly even Jade. I mean, she'd be a debutante, but she's been around for a long time representing Queensland. So Jade would be someone who I wouldn't be surprised would get maybe not captain, but at least in the leadership group, vice captain perhaps. So what do you reckon?
Well, I think Leah Kasler's a very strong chance to be the captain for the inaugural side. She was actually the women's team captain back in 2016 when we played an exhibition Q Clash. So I feel like it would be very fitting for her to retain that several years on when the Suns come into the competition.
Maybe Sam Virgo. She'd be certainly a walk-up starter to be one of the leaders. And it's great to have normally there would be one who would be head and shoulders above the rest, but there just isn't. They're a very promising team. Great for young women. My daughter thinks football's boring, but she's pretty interested in the AFLW, so there you go. Well,
it's not much longer to go. And with that, we're going to have to call an end to our episode, Tom. But we will hope to be back in probably just over 2 weeks, probably just in time for the first AFLW game. So until then, go Suns.
Go Suns.